Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 2013 Polyphonic on-campus webinar. This is Steve Danu from polyphonic.org, and we're very glad to have you joining us with others from around the country for what will be our first in a series of 3 webinars this spring. Tonight, we're very excited to have Casey Molino done with us, and Casey will be discussing the presentation you see right on your screen there, sharing your story, connecting with the media and your audience. Our next 2 webinars in the spring series will be taking place Monday, March 18th and Monday, April 22nd. And both of those webinars will feature a panel of presenters discussing 2 really interesting topics. The first will be auditions in March, and then self-promotion and branding in April. So we're certainly looking forward to those, and you can read more about those webinars and sign up for them for free at polyphonic.org. We also have all of our previous webinars recorded and available for your on-demand viewing on the website, polyphonic.org. We would also love to get your feedback on our webinar series, and certainly would love any ideas you have for webinar topics or presenters that you'd like to hear from. If you have those ideas, feel free to send them to us at info@polyphonic.org, or you can just go to polyphonic.org and send us a message right through the website. Finally, just a couple of logistics before we begin tonight's presentation. You'll notice that your phone or computer audio is muted by default just to cut down on background noise. However, we really encourage you to ask questions, and there are 2 ways to do that. The first is you can write a question into the question box located on your webinar control panel. And the other way is that there's a yellow hand button on your control panel, and that, if you press that, will let us know that you'd like to actually be unmuted and maybe ask a question directly to Casey. Either way, we'll sort of hold the questions to the end unless Casey prompts us for those in the middle. And we do want these webinars to be interactive, and so Casey may ask you for feedback at various points during the presentation, asking something such as what instrument we play. And so to send in a response, just simply type an answer into the question box on your control panel there. And so to start things off, we're curious where everyone is tuning in from this evening, and we thought it'd be nice if you could type into that box where you're coming in from. And while folks are writing in, I want to take this time to introduce and welcome Casey. So Casey is the Deputy Director of the Manhattan School of Music Center for Music Entrepreneurship, where he utilizes his background as a performer, educator, and arts administrator to help students and alums advance their careers. He's a baritone vocalist, pianist, actor, and has a background in both music and communications. So we're very excited to have Casey with us. And Casey, looks like we have people coming in from Colorado Springs, Pennsylvania, several from New York State area. So I'm not going to mention them all, but we will get going here, and we're happy to have everyone with us. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Casey.
Well, great. Thanks, Steve. It's wonderful to be here, and it's great to see folks out there also in Boston and New Jersey. This is a real treat for me to get to share some of my background with you, and also some of my thoughts on a really important topic that I hold near and dear. By the end of our time together, I'm hoping that you're going to have some more insight into public relations for musicians, as well as a better sense about which specific topics you might like to learn more about in this area, especially for musicians, as they very much need to function as their own publicists, especially during the emerging parts of their career. As the start of any music career, emerging artists very frequently have to spearhead a range of business and entrepreneurial and indeed promotional responsibilities, as many of you are so much aware, even if they eventually hope to have help from those outside of their career and eventually have management to get assistance in the range of publicity and marketing and obviously booking everything from concerts to other opportunities. What they can gain by being their own publicist and getting a sense of the information landscape from the beginning of their career is paramount to help them advance and really know what's out there and how the musical landscape works. Throughout any musician's career, there will obviously be, hopefully, a range of exciting news to share, such as unique and diverse upcoming performances, album releases, and other noteworthy happenings. Down the road, obviously, today's musician's career can include a range of activities, perhaps digitally launching new initiatives, creating music education opportunities, ideally advancing the art form in unique ways. Before we jump into some of the details of how to best share your story, I just want to talk about a few quick terms to clarify some of them that I'll be using throughout our presentation. I'm going to use the term media in a very general way to encompass certainly a range of communication outlets that reach and hopefully influence people. Obviously, these outlets can include everything from radio and TV, newspapers, magazines, and a whole range of web-based outlets, which social media is certainly a very powerful force. Some other terms that quite often get thrown in the mix is advertising, marketing, promotion, publicity, public relations. I want to make a distinction in our conversation tonight about advertising obviously being the result of place promotion, and while it can be considered a form of public relations, it's very much coming from the person who's placing the ads. There are obviously a range of publicity opportunities for public exposure, often via the media that is free. And this is where public relations really enters the picture in terms of making sure that an artist exposes themselves to reach not only new audiences, but also connect with folks who may have been following their career and want to know what is happening. In thinking about just some general terms, promotion very much is a combination of the communication activities that include different advertising and public relations initiatives, while marketing can be thought of as this overall process of really communicating and connecting a product with a target audience through the mix of not only that product, but its price, its place, its promotion. And in talking tonight and thinking about musicians' public relations, we're going to obviously think of the musician's product as their art and how they share it. Now, artists and the media and the audience, whether it be the media outlet's audience or the audience of the artist, all work in a unique triangle, so to speak, and it can sometimes be a love-hate relationship. But what is paramount is that the media needs an audience, artists need an audience, and there are some other areas that folks that are performing help the media with, and likewise the media helps them. Media obviously needs content to share with an audience. Artists have content, whether it be news about upcoming performances, content also obviously being the actual music that they're sharing, which they want to get to the audience. So it's key to realize that though this might all seem a little philosophical, often what's at the heart of how the media works and what it provides is key to understanding the different nuances of how to really reach out to not only your audience, but the media that helps to connect. Obviously, we're all very aware of the different mediums that we can connect with, especially in today's world. We've seen much more happening digitally and much more combination of the different types of media outlets. Obviously, so many newspapers today connect in many different ways online and with video. Likewise, radio and TV conglomerates have become much more integrated. What's perhaps more interesting to think of and digging deep down is the different coverage styles that do exist, and that in our society we have TV and radio and print and digital media that can be biased, but that obviously also sometimes is unbiased and often contains an interactive component to bring in the audience. What I want to do right now is obviously a little bit of an overview that many of you are very familiar with, but wanted to think for a little bit about your connection with the media in different mediums and ask you to take maybe 30 seconds or so and find out where you get your news from. You probably get it from a range of sources. You might read a paper online or print every day, watch the news, both local and national, listen to favorite radio stations, and maybe even regularly visit specific websites targeted geographically or focused on a specific topic, perhaps your instrument, perhaps ensembles, perhaps you're reading polyphonic regularly. So it wouldn't surprise me if you have favorite sources for both your arts news and your non-arts news. So as I was saying, it'd be great if you could take just a few seconds to make 2 lists of where you get both your musical news and your non-musical news. And as you do that, I'm going to ask 2 questions, or actually a few questions, about your information intake. I'm going to ask, is there any overlap between these groups? Where is that? Why do you think that is, and why not? And these are the answers to these questions very much we're going to have you hold on to for a second this. But I'm asking you to do this to start a very simplistic media list of outlets that you already connect with regularly, even if you're just connecting with them as an audience member. Though the media landscape's a vast one, by being an audience member, you may already have important understandings of how some outlets set up their reporting and how they work, which obviously is key to exploring how they can help you share your activities. I always find it revealing when I'm working with musicians that are interested in gaining more media coverage for their career, but they are not regularly an audience member of outlets that they would like to be featured in. I find it often a bit challenging given this setup because they don't have the knowledge of how that outlet works. So they're often putting themselves at a disadvantage. Though this might sound a little out there, I kind of think of this as like someone saying they like ice cream but have no idea what their favorite flavor is or where they could even go to get ice cream. The reason I'm bringing this up is that having a sense of the types of outlets and specific targets that are out there is important to understanding not only the media landscape, but how it can help an artist's career. Any publicist will obviously tell you that they need to know the landscape to help you, but it is often key for the musician to know as much about the media landscape as possible, especially when they're the ones at the start of their career who are often responsible for best targeting outlets and honing in on the types of possible coverage that is possible. So I want to spend a quick second talking about types of coverage that is possible. Everything from the reviews that musicians love to use, and because it shares someone else's opinion in a very public form, to the possibility for interviews, features, broadcasts, whether it be on a internet radio, real radio, a AM morning TV show, to the importance of listings, whether it be a calendar listing, a listing that can exist in a even hometown shopper newspaper. Some media outlets even have opportunities for musicians, obviously, to be a guest, as I mentioned, or a guest host and showcase their talents in ways that really allow the audience of both the media outlet and hopefully the audience of the musician to really see them in action. Of course, many folks obviously set up parts of their own online presence with parallels in their websites where they have a news feed, their Facebook pages, their Twitter feeds. However, we're going to focus on established outlets for the rest of our talk that are really propelled by a bit more of an organizational hierarchy, and hierarchy that sometimes we, quite frankly, need to crack. So let's take a second just to think about the range and types of sources. Perhaps the personal list that you made earlier of media outlets hinted at some of these, printed here, everything from newspapers, newsletters, trade publications, to specific targeted websites that focus in on activities of folks in your area, in your genre. Since it can be extremely challenging to get a major daily newspaper to print a feature or even a review about you, especially given the amount of activities and even the decrease in the number of those higher profile outlets, one of the challenges sometimes with diminishing arts coverage is to think of what other opportunities can be key. Making sure you know local newspaper when you're touring a school newspaper such as one at a college, which may be especially interested in some of the new and unique things that you're doing and are especially interested for their audience. What's also interesting is that there are many media outlets that, quite frankly, reprint a number of submitted press releases. So you have a great opportunity to really hone in on your story and share it specifically the way you like. I strongly advise you, if you're touring in a new area, to really get a sense of what outlets exist, not only there, but what outlets exist specific to your background. And we're going to talk about how to look for those outlets in a little bit. Researching the market where you want to gain coverage in is certainly key. What's also important is realizing that connecting with the media is very much a two-way street. It's important for you to know what outlets typically cover what you're trying to share and how they would like to garner information, specifically what their timeline is frequently detailed on the outlet's webpage. As you hone in on certain publications and markets, it's very much key for you to gain an awareness of how that outlet and its writers cover specific topics that are related to you and your work. And important to notice how often arts-related articles can appear in varied media and also in parts of that media, whether it be a section of a newspaper, for example, that focuses on health news. If you have something health news related with your music, if you're performing, for example, at a senior center and performing a bit of music therapy, how you can perhaps reach out to folks in different areas within those outlets that maybe don't cover music all the time. So as we start to dig deeper, I'm going to encourage you to think about an aspect of your career that you would like to share now or perhaps in the future. Maybe it's a specific performance or something that you have coming up, a product that you're going to release, whether it be a CD, a digital score. And ask you to think about why this is of interest. Who not only is your target audience, but what is newsworthy about this product, this event? What makes it stand out? Why is it different? And as you get ready to share details and think about how to publicize that event, project, or other news, and eventually obviously put together a media list, I want to encourage you to be able to really answer big why. Why is this important? This is key to connecting with media that, quite frankly, is bombarded with a lot going on in their neighborhood and obviously in our world. Being able to whet a potential reporter's appetite is key. And no matter what the medium, often being able to pinpoint what makes this stand out is an important way to gain coverage, and what makes this stand out in this different, for that outlet and also in the area that they cover. Obviously, to even get a calendar listing or a small amount of coverage, it's very important to develop a press release that answers some essential questions. Obviously, the who, what, where, when, how, and as I mentioned, the why. Some ways that these quick words can help us focus in on what we need to share is just looking through, thinking obviously who's involved, who do we want to come, what are we going to be performing, where is it taking place, when, how is it our music being shared, our project being shared, and why, again, is this important. I think it's also key to be thinking about why this is of relevance now, and also thinking of it from a reporter's perspective. How will you share what you're going to share in this performance? Why are you sharing this rep? And this presents some interesting opportunities for you to really say why you feel passionate about what you're doing. We are going to take a peek now at how this all comes together in constructing a press release. And we're going to look at some models. The first is from Acme, which is a great new music ensemble that I was fortunate to work with. Over the past couple of years, they have really propelled in the New York area and also been touring around the country and also internationally. Acme is represented by Christina Jensen, Public Relations, and they have worked with a number of emerging and very established contemporary composers. They've not only performed at a very high level, but they have really worked their whole public relation image from the ground up. In sharing news, whether it be a performance or a recent album release, having a press release ready to go is often at the heart and starts off the whole media campaign. We're going to take a quick peek at a link of a press release for an upcoming performance that's happening in Virginia. And the reason I wanted to share this one is that it gives an idea of how to structure a press release, also how a New York ensemble that has some renown in the city and indeed beyond, but is going to part of Virginia, how they have really talked about what they're doing. Now, some of this is a little formulaic in that it presents the vital information, the who, what, where, when, how, and some of the why at the top. So it's very much set up and ready to be used for a calendar listing. It also gives a number of details about how folks can attend the performance, but then gives us a nice summary of why this is important. Obviously, the New York Times says it's important. The New York Times obviously carries weight, but what's interesting is there are some links here about how any media outlet and anyone working in the media can get a quick glimpse of them. There's a nice summary in this first paragraph that very much replicates, to a certain extent, some of what is in the heading. And that can be very key, not only in helping to reemphasize, obviously, the essentials, but if this top part were to be just cut and run from a calendar listing and the same details weren't summarized later, it could possibly be challenging to really reprint the highlighted information in a article that might very well be a press release just run in its full form. So as you can see and perhaps are taking a peek, there's a lot of details about what is going to be shared. There are some quotes that really give a sense of the sound, that's detailed in terms of connecting with obviously folks who not only like Stravinsky, but some folks who may have a connection to heavy metal, or rather death metal. This is also a way to summarize what's coming up, not only for this concert, but a hint of what might be coming up in the future, and a way to really share the range of activities of this group. As you can see further down, too, we get a more of a longer bio that fills in some details that may not have been as relevant to the earlier mentioned performance. So when putting together a press release, there are a number of repeat or often information that we can use again and again, obviously making sure it flows with the specifics of the overall press release. But seeing that the bio is very much there and gives details in a consistent way, so that the part of the press release that we're often most regularly manipulating and updating is very specific to the upcoming performance. So this is from Christina Jensen PR, and you can take a peek at her range of artists and a number of their press releases that are on that site. I want to take a look at how this can work a little in action, and what sharing this press release with the media can help do, and then how that translates to getting a media attention. So this is from a press release of a performance that happened last year. And again, some details there. What happened after this was distributed and media was alerted, and I'm sure a range of follow-up was done, is that there was some coverage in a range of outlets, including this blog that has a pretty big following in the city and is a little bit more quirky in that it covers a range of topics, both music, photos, and news, written by, as you can see, a vegan in Brooklyn. Want to share with folks that learning to be your own publicist and learning to best share your projects is a process. And it involves seeing how other folks do this. Musical America is a tremendous resource on a number of professional development topics and areas, and provides many different releases that folks can submit. This is directly from their website. You can see how you can add releases, and you can get a sense of what other folks have submitted. Some tips and observations I'd like to share about press releases is you see that they are most frequently now shared in digital format. They include quotes, links, and photos, and often are about a page, maybe 2 pages long. But they're extremely organized, and the nature of a webinar doesn't really allow for as much detail in terms of the anatomy and official constructing of a press release, but it would encourage you sometime, if this is something that you would like to focus in on, to take a second and just Google for constructing a press release or anatomy of a press release. There's also some fine resources out there, both Beyond Talent, Angela Miles Beeching book, and also David Cutler's The Savvy Musician detail putting up ways to construct and eventually share a press release, which we're going to get into the sharing a little bit more. Obviously, like anything, practice, practice, practice. But there are a number of resources out there, such as TargetWire, that also talks about how to construct a press release. It's more based on the non-music business world, but TargetWire is one resource that exists for sharing a press release on a larger scale. It is a fee-involved service. I think it's also key to keep up with trends and insights that many colleagues and arts thinkers provide. Your job is to become a media maven and understand how this works at a highest level as possible, but also to pay attention to how the landscape may be changing. Some of you may know Amanda Amir, who writes for Arts Journal, and then also Greg Sandow, who writes on the future of classical music, and both talk about how different arts organizations and artists, and indeed if they have a team working for them, those their publicists and their managers can sometimes be successful, but sometimes can also create some unique situations where an artist may not be publicized in the best possible light. What's interesting is that there also can be some provocative thoughts about how to share not only press releases, but also publicizing in general. And Greg Sandow has written a lot about this. And what's interesting is press releases are very factual, and they are to help the media get a sense of what you are trying to share with your audience. Greg often takes a look at how the tradition has established itself and how it may be worth looking at different ways to explore and ways to get attention by standing out. And there are ways that your press releases and also your range of publicity can do that. But as you construct a press release, it's really important, obviously, then to target it. And this can be a little bit of chicken and egg. What do you do first? Create a media list or write your release? And in my experience, they happen a little bit simultaneously. You're creating a release that gives the details of, again, an event, a product, an important happening. And then you're creating a list to share that release with, and then also follow up with all of the outlets, the reporters, the folks on that list that you want to cover your event. So as you create a list, it's quite important to identify media outlets in a very comprehensive way with as much lead time as possible. Now, there's a number of resources out there that media professionals use, both on the journalistic side and also folks working as publicists that are very high-end. The two major ones are Focus and Cision, and they come with some hefty fees, but there are a number of available resources out there for musicians. Of course, it's key to know what the different media outlets are covering, and specifically who within that media outlet might be covering your area and who might be on the arc beat. As you look at ways to identify outlets that exist, it's very helpful to spend a little time at your public library, but as we know, that has very much come to our home computer. The Internet Public Library has a wide range of resources to identify not only newspapers and magazines, but also other media outlets. And this is something that's easily searchable. Congress.org has a great media guide that you can look up by zip code. And also there's a number of organizations such as TVA Media Group that work with individuals to help identify how to best share their story, but they provide resources online that anyone can use. Obviously, LinkedIn and Twitter are a great way to see who is out there writing for some of these outlets in more traditional media and how they are reachable. Obviously, Twitter is one way, but finding out their email address, if they have a website, all of that information about them. Also thinking about different blogs is key. Looking at where are not only the key music blogs, which are great if you have something that is noteworthy at that very national and indeed international level, but trying to find blogs that might exist in an area that you are touring in, blogs that are specific to not only your instrument, but perhaps the genre of music that you're working in. It's very important to keep in mind that all news is local, and figuring out what the locality is key. Is this news, again, of interest to a specific area of the country, a specific town where this performance is taking place, or a wider locality that may include a whole region, or is local in terms of it will connect with your the audience and the fan base that you've developed. I wanted to share an example of an ensemble that, though they are New York-based, keeps a local base in Pittsburgh. And this is a colleague of mine, trumpeter Andy Kozar. His group Load Bang has performed a range in the city. They also have a following in Pittsburgh where he's from. And this is through Pittsburgh New Music Net, a great resource that he's kept in touch with and reached out to. I'm sure Andy has not only submitted press releases, but has done some specific targeting and following up on those releases with different folks in the media. So after you have a release ready to go, you've put together a list of media contacts, collected emails, found out who is out there writing about different topics that are of relevance to you and that are of relevance to that specific release. You've shared it with them. You've blasted in a very smart way by making sure that you've blind carbon copied everyone if you're sending that email out all at once. You've put the text not only of the release, not only in the email, but you've attached it as a PDF so that they have options. And as you can see from those releases we looked at previously, the release included media in the form of photos, also perhaps some links. And that's gone out. And now you have an opportunity to not only follow up, but to make sure that release really carries some weight and gets the attention that your event or your product or your general news deserves. It's really important to work backwards from your event or release date. And 4 to 6 weeks before the event often is a really good standard, if you can keep to it, if that is possible, to really start planning how you're going to do this and send out that initial release. Then, as it starts to get closer, target key contacts, sharing with them convincing reasons of why they should cover your news. Rather, again, make sure you're providing succinct and professionally written material with related photos, video, and audio. Obviously, you're being the professional at this point and have looked how others do this. You're making sure to think like the journalist you're trying to connect to. Why should they cover this? Why should they care? It can be helpful sometimes to think about this as idea sharing and not necessarily promoting yourself. Obviously, that is what you are doing, but you're sharing with them some ideas for coverage. That can sometimes help take a little bit of the edge off in terms of feeling self-conscious about sharing what could feel like the me show. This can be done in a number of formats. Sometimes calls can be helpful, but these folks often are bombarded by information. So a targeted email is best. I want to share here, it's a lot of verbiage for a PowerPoint slide, but this is a follow-up email that I've used previously, both for personal projects and also when working with different folks to share their news. So this would be shared with someone in the media and would encourage them to take note of the release that you probably previously sent them. This might go out 2 weeks after, and perhaps you haven't heard from them. Maybe if when the initial release went out, they were so excited that their outlet is already planning to do a mini feature and perhaps interview the artist. But this is a way to hopefully nudge them along. And as you can see, it keeps it personal, but it keeps it matter of fact, and just emphasizes that you're hoping for them to cover and provide some coverage for an upcoming appearance. Similarly, this could be used to highlight, again, a new product, such as a CD, or some really exciting news that they would consider newsworthy that relates to your career. So that's there for you to take a peek at. As you can see, this also is an opportunity to provide even more links and specific interviews or other clips. And hopefully, as you have been going along, gaining media attention, you've been very meticulously taking it all into account, keeping it organized both digitally, and it can be very helpful, obviously, to have a hard copy as well, so that when you need to share it with not only the media, but also other folks who can help your career, it's all in one place. I want to just show a resource that is really helpful in thinking about ways to connect with the media and really show them why you deserve coverage, why your project, why your ensemble. So this is a resource from copyblogger.com, and there's 109 different tips in here. I'm not going to obviously read all of them, but to give you a sense of how to make this personal, how to connect with the media on a level that shows them you're not only a real person, but that you care about what they're doing. Again, it's very much a two-way street, and the media needs not only artists and musicians, but they need content, and you're helping them to connect with, hopefully, events and happenings and news that is of interest. So as I hinted earlier, the more you are connected with the media, the more you actually read other articles by the same people you're trying to connect with, by the same journalists, the better equipped you are to really connect with them and show that you are not only aware of what they're covering, but you're in a better place to frame what you're doing as newsworthy. So this is a resource that, again, it's copyblogger.com/irresistible-PR. Wanted to just think a little bit more about different mediums and talk about some of the keys that play into this. Obviously, having visuals is key in not only print, but also TV. Making sure in radio and TV that you have, as you grow your career, some previous clips available to best share what you can do. And so that folks can get a sense before they invite you for an interview what is possible and how you communicate. Making sure you're always reviewing your message and how it plays out in different media forms. Determining geographic scope not only of your outreach, but also of the outlet's outreach. And being able to narrow your list of contacts as needed, but also casting a wide net without ticking people off. Quite frankly, if you're trying to connect with some media who really doesn't cover your beat, your area, they are not going to pay attention, and your name will quickly perhaps get known within their outlet as someone who is, if you're spamming them and sending them a fair amount of unnecessary material, that can certainly get around. Making sure, though, that you are sending out your news, obviously, to your personal audience that you've made sure to reach out with, but to different outlets within the area. I think it's also key to make sure that you're following how your colleagues connect with the media, how they share their news with different media, whether it be websites, trade publications, and such. What type of media are they getting? It can be key to see who is the recipient of the Arts Pick of the Week, or perhaps the critic's choice. Making sure that you're also looking to see what is getting reviewed in different outlets. Which performances are certain critics going to? And how can you help to get some of that attention? Obviously, there are, as many of us are aware, there are frequently less critics from some of the major outlets, but there are more online, writing for blogs. And knowing which of those blogs are important for a large number of people. As you think back to preparing press releases, you have a number of opportunities to really write a headline for your career, to make sure that not only the essential facts are in there, but as I talked about earlier, that you really highlighted using concrete facts, but you've highlighted why what you're doing is important. That obviously it's proofread a number of times, that your language is relevant to your target audience. It's not necessarily too flowery or too artsy, or involves too many musical terms that may not connect with a general audience that you are trying to reach. You can see, certainly as we looked at just a quick sample of press releases, that there are a number of formatting tips that help it to make it more readable. And then as you're compiling media lists, you will be building a range of folks that you want to reach out to, both in a specific area if you're presenting something in a limited geographic area, but then as you have a number of projects over time, you are growing perhaps a more national media list for some of these big announcements that can help you connect with folks who are covering specific topics that are much more concerned with the product side. So this is, again, an overview. I've covered a range here, but I wanted to see what questions folks might have. If anyone is certainly invited to type in, can certainly backtrack and certainly talk about some areas that I haven't covered. I have a couple that I want to talk about after that, but right now I wanted to see what questions, if any, folks had.
And this is Steve. Let me just jump back in by reminding people, as Casey said, There's a question box located on your webinar control panel, so feel free to just type a question in there, send it in, and we will certainly read it for you. Casey, I have a question that came in here to me that I will give you is, do you think the proliferation of blogs has decreased the importance of major media outlets?
I think it can vary from market to market. One of the ironies here is that with the emergence of the internet, folks can have a megaphone arguably a lot easier than they previously could have. So there are more folks chiming in both critical ways and also in ways to help share news. I think the blogs can sometimes, depending who's blogging, and sometimes that person may have worked for a major media outlet, a blog may be one of the few places, depending on the media market, that that market is getting high quality reviews of art, music, whether it be classical or jazz. So I think we've seen in certain major cities in the U.S. blogs taking the place of a newspaper or a art section that used to exist and helping share news. So I think that they play a key role, and their role is growing. I think we also are seeing, obviously, so many of our major outlets now having such an internet presence, and being our newspapers in particular, and obviously magazines, that so much of our media is going that route, that they are blogs, and internet media in general is playing such a bigger part on the landscape.
Great. Well, that's obviously a big question, because we had another question which is very similar come in that says, do you find that online media is becoming more relevant than print media, or should it be based on your local area? So maybe just as a follow-up, does that matter in terms of your local area?
I think it's knowing what is available in your local area. And this is why the reason I encourage you to focus on knowing, being very much aware of what outlets exist and where you get your news, and ideally your music news as well, and your local music news. So being aware of what's out there is not only key, but thinking how you can also contribute to it. We see so much more now, too, that so many sites provide an opportunity for anyone to give feedback. So there's an opportunity for folks to chime in and share their own critical or perhaps not critical responses on articles, on features, and that can be key. We obviously see ways that folks can share it over Facebook and other ways to connect that media even further.
Great. Another question that's come in here says, as a young musician, do you think there is an advantage to your press release or news coming from someone other than yourself, or do media outlets not see that as an issue?
Sure. I think it depends on the person, the media outlet. I know I often will use I will write in third person and highlight that the artist can be contacted, and often share my contact information. I know I personally often share a separate email address from my personal email address that may be a little more vague in terms of, it may just have, for example, press at, and the email address I'm using for that. So that can be a way to make it perhaps look a little more professional, but it depends on the outlet too. I think it's important for you to know, and the media often is aware of this, that connecting directly with the artist can be a good thing if you're, especially if you're not looking for a review right at the beginning, although obviously in today's interconnected age, artists are sometimes connecting with folks who may be writing a review ahead of time in terms of sharing the details with them. So I think we've also seen a little less, perhaps, some of the barriers come down. They've been a little less prevalent in that folks do know that emerging artists, folks in the media, do know that emerging artists are often taking the bull by the horn. It comes down to, at the end of the day, when do you feel that you might be ready to get someone to help you, whether that person is a full-time professional publicist or it's someone who might be working in it a little bit. I think if you start having someone else help you out with it, you want to make sure, obviously, they have not only a sense, but they know what they're doing. And obviously, if you've done it, they know you're aware of how things should be working. But it's also important for a musician, especially as their time, as they have less time, depending where they are in their career, that they are getting some assistance. And maybe you have someone advocating on your behalf who might be helping you in other areas, but that someone, obviously, you might be helping them prepare what's going to get sent out, but they're managing a separate email account that just focuses on your publicity. So I think there's a number of different approaches that are tailored to the artist.
Great. Another question that's come in here says, what do you personally think about advertising classical music? I find it difficult to attract readers.
Might ask for a little follow-up on the question, but in terms of advertising classical music, advertising can take a number of different forms. I actually the other day was playing around on Facebook to do a little advertising there and see how far just $12 would go for an upcoming performance that is highlighted in some news feeds. And I'm going to see personally how much that had an effect in that area of New Jersey. But I think when you're advertising is, how much bang for your buck, what is your advertising potential, but knowing where to advertise. I think there's a lot of opportunities for free advertisement, maybe sharing with a colleague in the area who may have a series that you've played on before, that you want to say, would it be possible for me to advertise an upcoming performance somewhere else, not too far away, and then trade off when I play my performance, I'm also going to advertise your series and work that in as a way to really community-based advertising. And by sharing ads with a very targeted audience, folks who come to concerts, it's possible that you're connecting with the people who you really want to see the ad. So I think that is key. Thinking about how you're going to obviously raise funds to do that, looking at what advertisement might be contributed by that outlet. Sometimes you can get a sense, is that outlet, that media outlet, such as a local newspaper, sponsoring or listed as a donor to a local concert series or a local performing arts venue. And then starting to make those connections, growing that relationship with that media outlet, with some of the writers there, with the editors there, so that you really have a connection on a long term, especially if you're playing in one area over a longer time period. Was there a second part to that question I may have brushed over?
No, I think that made sense to me. It certainly seems like you answered the question, but that was from Crystal. And if Crystal, you have a follow-up question, feel free to write that in. Crystal actually did have a second question, which was,
sure.
What is the difference in writing a review versus a critic article?
Well, a review often, well, often is going to give a little more feedback, whereas sometimes critics, if I understand the question correctly, sometimes because of the way staffing works or also interest, a critic may be writing more of a feature article often before a performance, for example, or more of a news-based article that focuses on something exciting that might be a trend within the art form. So knowing that some journalists do that both online and in outlets that are just online and also in outlets that are still in print, and knowing, again, about that person, what are they writing about, what are some of their quirks, if you've been reading their articles over a long period of time, they may have some favorite repertoire. They may have some approaches to certain types of repertoire that they just aren't big fans of, and they're going to share that, and they may share that repeatedly. So you're doing yourself a service, a big service, if you're aware of that going into either a feature article, an interview situation with someone, or if there's a possibility they might be covering a performance of yours. That's not to say that any critic is the be-all or end-all, but they have they're human. They have certain things that they like and don't like, and certain critics are happy to share that. But I think they also, in my experience, take their job as musicians do very seriously, and they're there to advance the art form. Critics, just like musicians, are in general very hardworking people who have a lot going on in the evenings, a lot going on in general, and they're often writing a lot, just like musicians are playing a lot. So they come at it with that set of eyes, and it's important to know when interacting with folks in the media that they, again, are bombarded to a certain extent, and that you not only help yourself out in terms of possibly getting coverage, but help them out by making sure what you share is streamlined and easy to follow, and detailed as it needs to be, but doesn't go overboard.
Great, and we probably have time for one more question, and we have one that's actually somewhat related to that one that you just were referring to. And this question says, it seems like we talk a lot about connecting with the media in advance of a performance or a recording release. What about music reviews or reviews of performances published after the fact?
Thanks. This actually, I was going to save a little for the closing, but it is cyclical a little bit, as we've talked about, that connecting with someone after an article can be a really beneficial way to not only say thank you, but also so that they remember that you're someone who appreciated their coverage. And if you have someone representing you, they can certainly help do that depending on the context in which the person in the media covered you and your performance or wrote a review. Sometimes that can be a nice way so that they, your representative can speak on your behalf, and so that if someone's giving a critical review, hopefully in the best possible way, you are able to connect with them and hopefully thank them for a good review, but also perhaps as needed to keep a little bit of distance, which folks working in the field often connect with these critics for a number of different clients, so they have a sense and they have a rapport, and down the road that can be one of the advantages of working with someone who makes their profession as a publicist. But thanking someone for coverage is in my experience, very often greatly appreciated, and is a way to show that you're a musician who obviously appreciates their coverage, but thinks highly of what they're doing. So I think that can carry a lot of weight and can help you as you look for future opportunities to connect not only with that person, but the media in general, because that person, may have a number of colleagues from other outlets, or even colleagues at their own outlets that might be interested in covering you next time. And you've then set yourself up for some future possibilities.
Wonderful. Well, as we approach the 9 o'clock hour, I want to certainly take this opportunity to thank Casey for taking the time to be with us this evening and share all these thoughts. Really wonderful stuff. And certainly want to thank everyone for tuning in and joining us. If you have additional questions that we didn't get a chance to address or you think about later, feel free to send them to us, info@polyphonic.org, or just go to the website and you can send us a message through there. Certainly, if you're on our mailing list, you'll see upcoming webinar notices coming. If you're not on our mailing list, we'd love to have you know about these events that we're doing. Again, that's just available on polyphonic.org. And Casey, anything else you'd like to leave us with tonight?
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. As Steve shared, I'd be happy to follow up through Polyphonic. Many of you also are welcome to and know that you can reach me at my email at Manhattan School, which is easy to find. It's really a pleasure to reconnect with Eastman School of Music and everything that goes on at Polyphonic and the Institute for Music Leadership. In thinking back about the presentation and just connecting with the media, again, it is something that practice certainly helps with. There are a number of resources out there, but a lot of it is common sense, thinking through how to best reach not only your audience, but the folks who can help you reach your audience. And as you're able, put yourself in their shoes, and realizing that the landscape is changing, and there's a lot written about where it may be going, and how to really take advantage of that. With the advent of the internet, obviously there are so many free resources, and not only free, but then some that can be accessed for small fees, but ways that musicians can really reach their target market, and their target market has grown. So having sensitivity to that, but also intensely working to share not only their story, but to pitch it to the right connections is key. So I hope this has helped with that, and again, I'd be happy to talk more with folks if I can be of further assistance.
Wonderful. Thanks, Casey. Thanks again to everyone for joining, and we hope to see you on our next webinar, March 18th, which will be a panel presentation on the topic of auditions. So certainly timely in the spring season, and we hope you'll be there to add your thoughts and questions to that one as well. So thanks again to everyone, and have a great night.